This is hilarious.
Welcome, everybody. This is Storycomic Presents, episode 29, and I have with us here Beserat Debebe, writer and creator of Etan Comics.
That's right. There you go.
Okay.
Founder of Etan Comics and writer of HAWI and Jumper. Correct.
There you go. Okay. And so thank you very much. And we're here to, we invited you on because you have an incredibly successful so far as of this recording Kickstarter promoting HAWI issues 1 and 2. This is your kind of putting in number 2 on this deal as well, correct?
Correct. First of all, thank you so much for having me. Very happy to be here.
Yeah.
And yes, so happy. This campaign has been crazy so far. HAWI issue 1 and 2. I didn't expect this to happen, so I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, as I said, and we were talking before the show started that being I've spent a lot of time in the continent of Africa, and for all of our viewers and listeners out there, Africa is not a country. Africa is made up of 54 countries.
Thank you.
And it is the continent of Africa. And Beserat, for some of our listeners and viewers out there that might be unfamiliar with your background and your story of how you created this publishing company. Do you want to first have people kind of introduce yourself and give people a quick background on how you got into comics?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I was born and raised in Ethiopia, and I came to the States around age 14 or so. My whole family moved here. I didn't really grow up with comics, but I grew up with a lot of animation shows. And by that, I mean whether it's X-Men animated series, Batman, Power Rangers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like all these things. We used to see them back in Ethiopia, but I never knew all these stories had comic books. Comics weren't really a big thing when I grew up. So when I came to the States is when I learned that there's such a thing as the comic medium. And I loved it. I used to hide in bookstores just to read comics, and most of my friends, my peers, like my Ethiopian friends especially, they weren't really into comics. So I was like, I had to kind of hide that part of me, just be just enjoy it. It was my thing. It was also like a guilty pleasure type thing. But I just loved the art. I loved the storytelling. I used to draw in my spare time. I'm not like some, I wish I kept drawing. My talents would be much better right now. But I used to draw for fun and just go and pick up an issue and Borders bookstore. Borders is gone now, but I used to pick up some books and just hide out in a corner, read it until my friends came, and then I'll pretend I was reading comics and go out and have fun. So since then, after high school or so, I kind of stopped reading them. I used to read a lot of comics between the age of 14 to 19ish, including manga. And after that, though, I kind of stopped because of life, and you got to get a job and all of that stuff. And as I said, because it was kind of frowned upon within at least our community, the Ethiopian community, to read comics, because there was a lot of stigma about comics are not real books, and you got to read novels now, and you got to study. So I kind of dropped it and just started paying attention to just the movies, all the superhero movies and Spider-Man and Avengers and all that stuff. And then it was actually, it was 3.5 years ago, where I saw this this promo for these 3 Ethiopian superhero characters that a lady named Bruktayit Agabu. She created this really 1-minute animation clip of these made-up kind of Ethiopian superheroes, that seemed like Powerpuff Girls. but the main intention she had for them was to teach, kind of to educate young girls in Ethiopia about different type of things in society, like how to avoid abuse, all these different things. And she had this concept of, you know, what if I use kind of like these three Ethiopian girl superhero versions to do that? And when I saw that clip, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. First of all, I'm so glad that she's doing this. But this, I can take this a step further because, like, we legit don't have superheroes or comics that are, inspired by Ethiopian mythologies, East African mythology, East African cultures. And like the idea of it was infectious, right? I couldn't stop thinking about it. And, I still had my corporate job. I still have my corporate job, but even at my work, I was just constantly thinking about, oh my God, this is, if I introduce this part of the mythology that I grew up with, and so on and so on. I just kept getting excited about it. And then, you know, I started looking for artists, it led to our first project, Jember. And then Jember, and that was published. And I know we're gonna get into this, so I don't want to like kind of fast forward it. But once Jember was published, I saw the reception of Jember. It was crazy. I thought it would be only me that enjoyed it, but a lot of people ended up enjoying it. There you go, that's Jember. And then how we came along, and then how we just kind of changed the game. I was like, okay, now this is for real. Like, it's no longer, oh my God, I'm doing this just because I want to see it and I love this stuff. But it's became like, oh my God, like there are people out there cosplaying HAWI and Jemba right now. And these characters just became part of their life. Like, I have been invited to people's lives in that way. So I was like, okay, now I'm just like doubling down, like there's no tomorrow. So that's where we are. And as you can see, I'm here.
So, give us a quick background of Jember was your first that was the first character,
Yeah.
and how were you introduced last year? Correct, issue 1 came out
2019. Yep,
2019. So, give us a quick rundown of all of our comic book fans out there.
Sure.
What's their background? What's their powers? All that kind of fun comic booky stuff.
Okay. All right. So Jember's story is actually, so Jember is like the superhero name, but the character's name, his name is Emmanuel Talaon. And his story is really inspired by like the life of my relatives and my cousins who live in Ethiopia. I visit Ethiopia every now and then. I still have a lot of family there. And his story is kind of inspired by their life, because the one thing that I know, living in Ethiopia, living in the capital city, Addis Ababa, is there's so much talent, young talent, like people with exceptional education and background, but no jobs, right? Unemployment is really high. It's tough. It's very competitive. And it kind of gives you this feeling of hopelessness, because you just have so much to give, but you're not allowed to give it because there's no opportunity. Right. And so when I dwelled on that idea and I thought about, okay, what if I had somebody like that and they were able to get powers or superpowers, and they lived in Ethiopia? Like, how would that play out? That's how the idea started. And it blossomed into such a wonderful idea because, we've seen how superheroes would, or people with powers kind of would grow up in New York, in America, and in different like kind of Western world countries. But in Ethiopia, there's, from my perspective at least, I know that superpowers will be taboo because people are very religious, right? If they see somebody flying, they'll be like, "Are you an angel or are you like the devil? Like which one are you? You know? And so I knew that there would be some sort of resistance, some sort of backlash to having supernatural abilities. It's not just embraced, you know, or it's not just something you just go on the news and, oh, look, an alien has arrived, blah blah blah. It just puts an interesting twist to the story. So it's like you have this kid who's living in, you know, Addis Ababa, wants to just desperately get a job. He's like really qualified, but you know, he just graduated at the top of his class and all that stuff, but he doesn't have a job. He's searching for a job just like everybody else. And, you know, he can't get it. And so he's like contemplating even leaving the city, right? Leaving out in you know, outside of the country. And all of a sudden he gets this ability, and he has this question of like, oh man, okay, I have this ability. All right, maybe this means I, you know, just like how I saw in the movies, I should help people out, right? Or I should just go get my job. And then he gets tempted more and more to just, listen, let me just help myself out and get my job, because his like actions to help people is backfiring. Nobody wants his help. You know, they're just like, I can't trust you. Like, you, like, what are you? Who are you? And this is like, you're an anti-religious to me. So you know, when you put in a position where you have the ability to help people, but people don't want your help, is it okay for you to just go help yourself, or do you still have that responsibility to help people? I thought that was a very interesting kind of dilemma and a story. So that's what Jember is about. Okay.
And what's it?
Go ahead.
Did you say his what do you have, like electric powers?
Oh yeah.
Or?
So his superpower, he is. So yes, his superpower is he converts his suit, and the ability he gets is that it allows him to convert in a limited way, but in an extensive, powerful way as well, to convert solar energy into electricity. So he can take the sun's energy and convert it to electricity.
Okay, and it comes from his suit. Then it's like
correct.
The suit
It comes from his suit. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And talk to us now about HAWI.
Got it. Okay, HAWI. And so HAWI's story is also a different slice of my experience in this world, which deals with the experience of a first gen immigrant, right? So when I came to the States, I had a very different experience compared to people that are in Ethiopia. And I've met different types of people in the, I guess, like maybe I should say the immigration scale, because there are people who are Ethiopian, who had Ethiopian parents, but who were born here. Mm-hmm. There are people who came like when they're like me, 14 years old or so. And then there's people who came at a later stage, right? These are different levels of immigrants in my kind of mindset, because they approach the world differently, and they're affected by their parents' generation differently. And there's a very interesting dynamic about identity that's there across these three different kind of segments. Anyway, I think this happens with anybody. It doesn't have to be an Ethiopian immigrant, but any other immigrant. But the story deals with a character named Imnet Legessa. She's around 20 years old or so, and she was born in Ethiopia, but she was born in Ethiopia, but she moved at a very young age, when she was a baby, to the United States, to like the DMV area, which is where most of the Ethiopians are, by the way. So she moved there, and she kind of has a spirit, a restless spirit to like go out, explore, and do things. But her mother is very protective, almost overprotective, because there's a reason they moved from Ethiopia, and her mother knows what that is. It had to do with her father's. I'm getting a little bit into the spoilers here, and I don't want to, but it has to do something with her father's death, right, at the very onset of the story. And so she's very protective of Mnet kind of going out and exploring things and all this stuff. But then because of some reason, which again, I don't want to spoil, some reason they're forced to go back to Ethiopia. And Mnet is excited a little bit about this opportunity because this is the first time she's going back. Just like many people I know who've been born in the States and really want to go back to kind of reconnect with their roots. But then on that trip, something even worse happens. Her mother gets kidnapped, and she gets kidnapped into this completely fantasy world. And this fantasy world is like a 10th century East African fantasy world. And Mnet goes after the kidnapper, this masked mercenary who just all of a sudden came out of this portal and just took her mom. And so you are essentially following this character who has sort of this identity kind of that she's seeking to find, and throwing her into deeper and deeper issues of that deal with identity. And you get to see all this fantastic world. I think that a lot of people, when they think about East African mythology and East African fantasy, they only focus on Egyptian fantasy. And I wanted to bring a different taste to that because there's so much awesome stuff that comes from Ethiopia, and I know Kenya and all the different East African countries. And so that's her story. It's really an African fantasy story. Just follows this first gen immigrant girl kind of going back to Ethiopia and then having to even go even deeper into this fantasy world to rescue her mom and discover what her family's past was.
So what's her superpower?
Her superpower is she has blue flames. So
Okay.
And you'll see how she gets to that ability. She doesn't start out with it and all that stuff, but blue flames, correct.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier how you've you're talking about your idea of your character of Jember was from some, experiences with like family members.
Mhm.
And you kind of mentioned how he was a benefit of, kind of understanding what a first generation immigrant or any of those levels of background would be. So when you sat down and wrote this out, because you're the writer of these scripts,
Yep.
how much of this was that you just based purely off of, just kind of like interpretations of your own personal experiences that you put on, or how much of it did you actually have to sit down and actually do research on, especially when you mentioned like a 10th generation 10th century
fantasy
background
world.
yeah.
So whenever it came to the way the characters were thinking about how do you approach X event, right? So how do you deal with, like, okay, I just saw something that is shiny or whatever. Do I pick it up or do I not? I just got an ability. What do I do with that? Those questions I draw from personal experience and from the experience of my relatives. So I didn't have to do much research on that because I kind of have an idea of how, at least in my opinion, a typical person living in Addis Ababa, an Ethiopian living in Addis Ababa, would react to those situations. So I can kind of see and write out the story based off of that. For the fantasy aspects and the historical context, I had to do the research. I definitely had to. I know a lot of Ethiopian history and a lot of mythologies, but there's also a lot I don't know. And I wanted to make sure this story was as authentic and rich as possible. So I really did a lot of research. I still do. And I still love reading stuff, sometimes to the point where it becomes an excuse not to write. I don't advise that. But yeah, I did a lot of research. I read a lot of books. I'm also, as I told you, I didn't like, it's not like I'm this prolific writer, right? I had to learn how to write comics. I had to do everything anew. I had a phase where I really loved comics and I ingested and I read about them, and then I like dropped out, and then I'm catching back up again. And that doesn't qualify me to be some sort of prolific writer, right? So I had to do the work of really learning about the comic medium, writing, and I still do that. So, yeah.
And so you would say that a lot of this, as you say, is based off of Ethiopian mythology. So there's a tie between Jember and HAWI to Ethiopian mythology.
Yes, yes. So there's a for how we there's a specific era of Ethiopian history and mythology that I'm focusing on is the Aksumite Empire is a big part of Ethiopian history, and there's a lot of mythology around their era. So I did a lot of research there. You can also probably find like if you go on our Kickstarter page, like you'll see the name of the empire. It says Aksumite Empire, and if you Google that, you'll see a lot of cool stuff on there. And then for Jember, there's a mythology about kind of a little bit dated before the Aksumite Empire, where it was like the land of Punt and all these different East African kind of nations where that's where I focused on as far as mythology and doing research on. So, yeah.
And is there, so you have this set up, listening to some previous interviews, you've kind of established Etan Comics in, was it 2017?
Yes, 2017. And we published the first book in February of 2018.
Okay. So now with HAWI, this is going to be your fourth book.
Correct. So
Two
Jember
issues
has
of each.
3 issues, and then
Okay.
HAWI has, this is the second. So already there are 4 books. So
Okay.
HAWI issue 1, and Jember has issue 1, 2, 3. And then
Okay.
now this Kickstarter will let us print HAWI issue 2. So that'd be great.
And you have, and from that, what's your production schedule like? Are you aiming to put out a couple books a year, or how is that?
Yeah, so my goal has been to do 2 a year. It's really tough. I would say I've been doing 1. This is the year that I've finally met that goal and would like to keep the pace of that. So whenever we publish, I interchange, right? So Jember issue 1 or Jember issue 2, and then HAWI issue 1, Jember issue 3, HAWI issue 2, kind of keep those stories going so people are still engaged with it. What I have been debating though, that maybe it's better to like do a graphic novel type publishing. After you do your issue 1, release then a graphic novel like that combines issue 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. Because we're getting into such a binge culture that it's every time you try to re-energize a crowd for an issue 2 and issue 3 and issue 4, I get concerned sometimes it becomes more challenging to keep them. And so, but with a graphic novel type model, you will always have like those amazing fans because they're passionate and they have at least something that closes an arc a little bit for them,
Right.
But yeah. So that's the schedule right now. We started with just doing 1 issue, 1 issue a year, and then we tried to step it up to 2.
Is there and so let me ask you that, do you have like an idea in your head of like a story arc for both of these characters?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I first started out so I'm an outline guy. I'm not a pantser. Those 2 schools of thought, right? Like, there's people who do this free. I don't. It's hard for me to do that. I don't have like at the same time although I outline, at the same time I don't have like every single detail in my outline. But I do know where I want the character to go. I do know how I want the character to grow. And I have a central theme that at least I feel for each story, for Jember and for HAWI. Jember is more about finding self-worth in a way, like it's for somebody who feels hopeless and powerless to go to feeling powerful, right? What does that arc mean? And how do you like just because you have an ability, it doesn't mean you're just all of a sudden powerful. But that self kind of worth, that's the arc of Jember that I'm hoping to kind of express. And then for Howie, again, it's a more of an identity themed story. So the outline arc I have is for her to kind of go from this person who has a restless spirit, yearning for adventure, and kind of in a little bit of a chaotic identity mode, to somebody who knows herself within, somebody who can be assertive and clear-headed and kind of be ahead of things instead of reacting to things. So that's kind of the arc that I'm hoping to express in these stories.
And do you have, so I don't want to assume, so I'm going to ask, are they part of the same shared universe?
Yes, that's correct. Yes,
Okay.
I am. My hope, my plan is to interconnect their stories at some point. So I have a outline for that too, but it's light and it's gonna be very flexible because I don't want to kind of pigeonhole the story to one thing. Sometimes you start getting to writing a story and you like the character doesn't obey what you want them to do, and so you gotta like be a little flexible. But yes, my goal is to interconnect their stories after a few arcs.
Well, because almost to the point where the MCU has kind of jaded writers to feel like if they're introducing more than one character, they have to have a team up.
Yeah, I mean, see, here's the thing. I've debated on that. I've really debated on that because at one point I also like stories that just end. You know what I mean? Like, have you like I do you follow Avatar: The Last Airbender? I'm sure you're familiar with it, but I don't know how much you follow it. But like one of the things I felt like Avatar did so amazingly is the story had an end, right? And this whole like rebooting and kind of trying to team up everybody and all these, I feel like that has exhausted comic fans a lot and kind of taken the joy out of the comic book storytelling method. And so if they do team up or whatnot, I still just want it to be like a story that ends. Not something that kind of just like reinvents itself every time and whatnot. But yeah, I think it would be interesting going in that route. It's also like for just general, these big publishers, they do this because they want you to buy all the different books.
Right.
It's also a kind of a marketing thing to connect stories where if your favorite character is going to pop up in another issue in another character, you'd be like, oh, I want to check that out. So yeah, I'm not there yet at all. I'm barely on issue 2 of HAWI. So, but yeah, if the opportunity presents itself, I'll be happy to do that.
And so then the other question
Yeah.
is there any other characters that are going to be coming out? Any other solo characters?
Man, I honestly I don't know yet. It's not that I'm short of ideas, right? I'll tell you, ideas are a dime a dozen. But I I just don't want to spread myself too thin before I like really do HAWI and Jember justice, right? I really want to do those stories well before I introduce new characters and new kind of paths. There's separate to the like Etan Comics universe. There's stories, ideas I have in different genres that I really, really, really like. I'm excited about and I want to explore. But at the same time, comic book is an expensive business for indie creators, and so you have to pay attention to, the projects you have on the table, fulfilling the customers' desires and the fans' desires, and fulfilling your desires. It's like there's so much to juggle. But yeah.
And how? So then it gets to my follow-up question:
Sure.
is there how much of this story are you guiding, and how much do you have that flexibility? You kind of mentioned sometimes the characters will kind of steer in a certain direction you weren't planning. How much of it is based off of the readers? Like, hypothetically speaking, what if you had a secondary character in HAWI that people really grabbed a hold of and said, "Oh, I love this character." Would you ever think about doing a spin-off series of something, or a one shot on a specific, just to kind of dive into actually purely for the readers, to sate the reader's curiosity? Would that be something you would ever do as well?
Yeah, no, I'm certainly open to that idea. Like I so from my perspective, my first objective is to like just write the Howie story from, or the Jember story from an authentic place for me, right? Not to just kind of bend the story to the will of the reader, but to the really to drive the point I'm trying to express with the story, and just kind of follow the character and where the character is going. But if there's, you know, this is the beautiful thing about stories, right? Stories are embraced in different way for different people. So there's like one character can, like, I don't expect everybody to fall in love with Howie or to fall in love with Jumba, you know, but there might be something that resonates with them. And so if there's enough people that are interested in exploring a different character or a different, you know, theme, I'd certainly be happy to look at it. If I'm not the best even to express that, I would be even open to finding another writer who would express that for that character. You know what I mean? I don't intend to be the only writer in the Etan Comics publishing kind of platform. I would love to give opportunity to other African writers and other fellow writers to who don't get their shine. So yeah, I'm certainly open to that. I don't see the harm in that, as long as the person is telling the story from an authentic place, and there's a demand from the fans for it. I'd be happy to do that.
And would you? So that you answered my other question. It was like to the point where, almost the point where you have, like, you know, what Stan Lee did for Marvel Comics, to the point where he became an outliner and he wrote and then you'd have other writers do that. Do you have, you know, you have that? Do you have a dream of? I'm just thinking, you know, just thinking out loud of like that, the amount of ideas and resources you can tap into with, you know, bordering there, where, like, you know, Ethiopia bordering on, you know, you got Kenya and Sudan right next door. They have their own mythologies and all these other things. And at what point would you, you know, kind of draw it out and almost to say, okay, these are, as you build this world itself, at what would you make it more open source, where you would say, all right, I'm not talking about anything in, you know, Madagascar or Zimbabwe or Benin? Would you, like, if somebody came to you, like, say for instance, if a Ghanaian came and said, hey, I really want to, can I tell this story here? Would you give them kind of like parameters, or would you just say go for it, or what?
No, absolutely. So I think that, so parameters are very important, right? Because they help like, for example, if the person is trying to write in the Etan Comics universe, then you have to kind of obey what has been expressed in the past, you know, to an extent, and then have your own freedom to bend the story to your kind of where you want it to go, or what theme you're trying to express. And I'll be very happy to do that, as long as, you know, like, you can't make the character do something that's just so off their character, right? Like, that would just be wrong. That would ruin kind of like the fan base's experience as well. So I wouldn't go down that path, but I'd certainly be open to somebody else come in and saying, hey, you know, I had this idea for this character, you know, given these boundary conditions, would you be open to kind of seeing this go out? I'd be very happy with that. And another thing is, like, along with this is, and you mentioned a great point, you know, the different mythologies in different countries. I would love for some, you know, in the future to have like a team, or like a group of collaborators where, you know, it doesn't even have to be an Etan Comics universe story. It could be outside of that. It could be a one shot. It could be a graphic novel, whatever it is, to have really quality stories just be put out, right? From based off of these mythologies. And I know that a lot of the people in different African countries don't have access like I do to Kickstarter, Indiegogo, to like all these different platforms that that the comic community really pays attention to and where they can use to put out their work. So I would be very happy to be that medium, to be that platform that allows new voices to come in, because people want these stories, creators want to create the stories. It's like the happy medium. um, Again, though, like you said, like it has to meet the boundary conditions of good quality and consistent kind of art, consistent storytelling methods, and just entertainment. So but yeah, I'll be open to that.
Mm. So let's talk a bit about your creative team that's kind of helped you put it together. You mentioned you have Stanley Ombinde,
Been there, yep.
and Mayan. Yeah,
Toyin
Toyin.
Morbi. Yeah, you can call him Morbi. Morbi is his nickname.
And those are both they're from Nigeria, correct?
Correct. Yes.
And talking to people will be listening to this who started to write comic books, and they're going to be like, you know what? I have an idea. I have a script out. Beserat, how do I find an artist? How do I find an inker? How do I find a letterer? How did you do this? Give me advice. What would you give them?
So what I did was I started looking for. So first off, know what you want. I think that's one of the fundamental steps you have to like. If you know what type of art you're looking for, right? You can look at different comic creators who are even really talented and famous in DC or whatever, but know the style you want, right? Because I kind of knew the style I want before I got in. I knew that I needed to have like amazing art, like art that wowed me, because I know how kind of picky like my community is about this kind of stuff. Like if you presented them some comic book work or some new work with just like okay quality, I know they're not going to give it attention. But if the art is mind blowing, then they'll be like, oh yeah, I want to try this out. So I knew that kind of going in. And so for me, it was like going to different forums. There's so many sites like DeviantArt. Facebook is a great platform for looking for artists. Reddit is a good platform. All these different places where you would go and say, "Hey, I have a project in mind. I want to have this type of art, right? And this is my rate." That's the last and most important step. You need to have money. don't don't be going on to any kind of sites or whatnot and say, "Hey, let's do it for exposure," or "I'll cut you in at the end if it the Kickstarter funds," or some like. Don't, please just stop right there. You need to have a budget. Be realistic with yourself. Have a budget and go and pitch, and people will respond to you. People are there. Yeah, so you have to like just get your budget, figure out what you want, post these ads, and you got to like iterate, right? You got to like work with people. Sometimes it doesn't work out, you got to do it again. It's a little bit of a trial and error type thing. So that's what I did, and that's what I advise people to do.
And did you keep the same artist for both Jembar and HAWI as well?
Yes, that's right. Okay. I did. Stan is doing both.
Okay. And was that a decision you want? Like that was a specific decision you wanted to make sure it was the same artist?
Yeah. I wanted to have a consistent quality of artists. Art on both projects, and then on top of that was, once you have a good team, it just makes life easier, right? You don't like finding a new team member is more work than working with the ones you got, especially if you built a good relationship. You don't even like have to explain so much, because they just get it. You vibe, you know what I mean? So it's once you get in that kind of rhythm, it's like, all right, this is what I'm thinking, and then he bounces an idea off. I'm like, oh yeah, go ahead, knock it out, boom. So it just makes it life easier. So that's why.
Okay. And And so my next question is, how did you found the art, you created good rapport? Did you make a contract? Did you have to sign something to keep everybody accountable on that?
Absolutely. I mean, always you got to, like, I would say, like, people think that having a contract should be this, like, man, like, you need to have like a 10-page letter with fine print and all that stuff about, like, oh, if you did this, I did that, and you sued me and blah blah. Like, it doesn't need to be that complicated. A contract, though, ensures that you are protected, the artist is protected, and you just got to be like keeping up with the timeline, right? So if you say, I'm turning in the script, I would like to have this, completed by, obviously you should discuss first before you draw the timeline. Don't just make up your own timeline. I want you to do like 20 pages of art in a week. That doesn't work, right? So you got to like discuss these things, but then you want to set up, all right, this is what you're owed at the end. This is what you're owed right now. And then, I expect this many pages either per week or bi-weekly, whatever it is that you have a tempo with, and kind of just set that up. And then put, like, if it's, who get, is this like rights wise that, like, both of us own the copyright, or like, all whatever it is that you want to set up and you agree with, you got to have that dialogue and set that up. And it's important to have that. It just saves everybody the headache later on if you ever come into some disagreement, and hopefully you don't.
And just from the logistics perspective of it, do you kind of have like weekly meetings or monthly meetings with everybody just to kind of do a status update on everything? Or
weekly we touch base, and like my kind of the way I work is like, look, you know what you're doing. If you have any questions for me, let me know. Reach out to me. I'll check in on you whenever, like, I have questions that I found some nice reference or something that I want to kind of share with you, and we've already agreed about, like, all right, you're going to turn in like whatever pages per week or per bi-weekly. So I just expect you to handle your stuff. If there's any problems, let me know. We work it together, and we just kind of bounce ideas off each other. I like giving the freedom to people to work at their own pace, as long as they're delivering on the results. I don't see the need to like micromanage people. And I think that creates such a powerful relationship too, because you give the person the freedom to be creative, be flexible, and just work in their own terms, be happy when they're working, right? Instead of like you micromanaging, hey, like, I haven't heard anything from you from yesterday, like, what's going on, are you bailing on me, all of that. So that's what I would advise people. I would say, like, if you're developing a relationship with an artist, like, you have to trust them to deliver, and you got to hold them accountable to their delivery, not to the how they do things, but more to the have they delivered on what we agreed upon, right? If you said, hey, I want a page once a week, and the person hasn't gave you a page and it's been like 3 weeks, there's a problem, right? Then you got to be like, all right, we need to talk.
Yeah.
Call you up. What's going on? You know what I mean? Yeah.
So let's talk about give people a quick let's talk about this Kickstarter that is going fantastically well. As you said, it's been out for
exactly.
It's a week. And you already have we already got 2 more backers. It's at 242.
I didn't even refresh it. It's still stuck at 240. Oh, yay, 2 more. Great.
So talk about, getting this together. How did, what you went through, how, what do you have now for like it looks like you have like some stretch goals as well.
Yes. So we have smashed through our goal, incredibly. And I've unlocked 2 stretch goals so far. We have a total of 5 planned, and I have 2. We already, backers already got the first one. It was HAWI printable art, coloring art, like for any fans who want to just color in and relax and enjoy. That has been added to all backers.
Okay.
The next one is this new Jemba sticker. I love this sticker. It has like even the Amharic kind of lettering with it. And it's going to be unlocked, it looks like, in like 1K. So that's awesome. So there's like 3 more or 4, I'm sorry, yeah, 3 more that I am super excited about that I would love for everybody to unlock. But this is going phenomenal. Just to kind of walk you through what you get, right? What you get on this campaign is obviously you get the books,
Right.
issue 1, issue 2, standard cover, beautiful covers, if I may say so myself.
Yes, that was a gorgeous cover.
So you get those. You can also get the Jemba issue, all 1, 2, 3. And I haven't talked about this in the beginning, but we publish our books both in English and Amharic. Amharic is like the Ethiopian national language.
That's
so
awesome.
yeah, so I love doing that. By the way, I've gotten such a positive response on that, because people have seen many things in the comic medium, but not an Amharic font comic, which is like, was so cool. So you can get that. So all HAWI books, all Jemba books, English or Amharic. You can get them signed, autographed, and whichever way you want, you can get that. So that's available in print and digital. And then we have the really cool variant, which is awesome, if I may say so myself again.
Oh, I saw the one that was based off of Wonder Woman.
Yes.
Oh, I love that cover. Let me get down to that one. Let me show that one. That is gorgeous. Yeah.
So Elliot Dixon, he's such an amazing artist. I'm so glad to have him on working on this variant. So what we came up with this idea of, hey, what if we do one variant, like only one variant for HAWI, like nothing else to be printed, just one variant, and how epic can we go? And so we were like, okay, how about we make it like an homage? And he was like, all right, you know what? I got this. And then he went and he came back with this idea. He took the Wonder Woman issue 1, first appearance Wonder Woman issue 1, and he converted that into a HAWI cover. And just look at the thing. Like, it had, how all of those kind of comics in the past have those political zings in there, right? So we kind of did our own thing with that. Hashtag Black Lives Matter. He changed that. If you see the buildings in the background, on the left side is the Aksum obelisk, which is that Aksumite kingdom fantasy that I told you about. And then on the right side is the Capitol, and it just looks amazing. I'm so proud of this cover, and I'm so proud that it's going to be also the only one, right? I get it. I get the point of variants and why people do variants, like 10 variants and all that stuff. It keeps the comic book people employed, but I want one and done with HAWI. And I wanted it to be special, since it's like the first kind of Ethiopian major comic book. And so I'm going with this one and doubling down and nothing more. And it seems like a lot of people love it. I'm so happy that it was a little bit of a bet, right? These kind of covers are a political gamble. And I was like, I'm going to stand my ground on this one. So I'm so excited.
Awesome.
So excited about that. And what else do we have? We have a art print. One of the tiers has like an art print that's included with it, and free shipping for anybody in the US. We have that's all. Everybody at every tier has free shipping. So those are the rewards you get. Check it out. See the video. My wife voiced that video, which is also so awesome. Um, it was, it's this kind of stuff, these Kickstarters and all these work. Sometimes people think like there's this huge team behind my back doing these videos, but listen, I'm telling you, it's a family affair, and we're just kind of bootstrapped and doing this thing, and it's just amazing to see all the response.
Yeah. No, that's great. And as I say, you have things are going, it's going great for you right now.
Man, God is good. That's all I'm gonna say.
You just got another backer, 243.
Why is yours refreshing more than mine?
That's awesome. This is great. I mean, Beserat, this is, as I say, I'm super excited about this. And as I say, you're knocking on that next, I would probably say within the next 24 hours easily, you're going to be unlocking that next stretch goal for 1,200.
Man, I hope so. I hope so.
Knock on wood.
Yeah.
So where can people find you? We're actually, this has been a pretty quick hour. So
yes.
where can people find you, Beserat?
Great question. So our website, our Facebook, and every handle is one word is what you got to remember, which is Etan Comics, ETAN Comics, ETAN, Etan Comics. It's also on the Kickstarter page. If you scroll the way down, you'll see it. We're at Etan Comics on Facebook, at Etan Comics on Instagram, Twitter. You can find us on there. I'm usually the guy behind, the social media stuff and all that stuff. So I respond quickly. That's our website. There you go. You got it. Yeah. That's etancomics.com. So simple to remember. But yeah, reach out. I'm always very happy to meet fellow creators and help. I actually run this thing on our Instagram page where I give tips to creators. I've kind of paused it for a little bit so I can do this Kickstarter promotion stuff, but there's a bunch of stuff, how to kind of take your idea into a comic, or how, why you shouldn't be worried that somebody's going to steal your idea, or, kind of tips like that, where you can just go and swipe, read, and be inspired, hopefully, and just make your project happen.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Beserat. This has been great. You. And next time when you're doing another book, add us to your list of podcasts to come visit. I had a great time talking to you.
Man, absolutely.
Good. All right. So we'll get ready to go. Here we go. Right. That was all the buffer part.
That's right.
That's all right. That was all the buffer part.
Watch. Right when we go live, and I'm like, let's do this, man. Let's do it.
All right. Welcome, everybody. This is episode 29 of Storycomic Presents, and I am honored to have with us here. We're talking to Beserat Debebe. Did I say it? I said it right?
Yes, Beserat Debebe.
Debebe. All right. Okay, that's right. All right. So we're here. I'll edit that part out. Let me start over. All right.